In this episode of GYDA Talks, Robert talks to Andrew Ellis, founder of Eye to Eye, one of the world's first new media agencies who designed and built some of the very first websites in the UK. He is also founder of We Are Like Minds, a thought leadership platform holding events in London, Exeter, Helsinki and New York.
And hello and welcome to the GYDA Grow Your Digital Agency Initiative. It's an absolute pleasure today to have with me the wonderful Drew Ellis from Like Minds, who has an amazing back history, but also has an amazing conference he currently runs. So welcome to you, Drew.
Thank you. Welcome. Great to be on the show.
So for those of you who don't know Drew, start us just by telling us a little bit about Like Minds and what you do with Like Minds.
Sure. So Like Minds was born in 2009, so we're 10 years old this year, and it really came out of a random tweet on Twitter. Twitter was just gaining ground in the UK in that year, and a guy based in Exeter, I live down in Devon, and a guy who's based in Exeter sent me a tweet saying, "Your bio looks interesting, can we meet for a coffee?" And so I left the house, and my wife asked me what I was doing, and I said, "I'm going to go and meet somebody in Exeter." She said, "You don't know anyone in Exeter. Are you going to meet another strange man on the internet?" And I said, "Yes, pretty much." So, because in those days it was a kind of weird thing to do. Now it's perfectly natural to ping somebody on a social network and ask to meet with them. I did it this morning, funnily enough. So I went to meet this guy, and he wanted to do what used to be called a tweet up. And I said, well, you know, tweet ups are kind of a bit dead now in London. It was fun in the beginning. You just put a message out on Twitter and say, "I'm going to be in all bar one at 6 o'clock in Leicester Square." Met Tim Ferriss at one of these and it was great fun, but it's sort of the equivalent of going to the pub now and standing up and shouting at everybody in the room, "Hi, my name's Andrew Ellis. Please come and talk to me." It's a bit weird. So I said, give it a focus, you know, find a speaker. We could maybe hire a room above a pub, listen to somebody talk for 15 minutes, and you know, then it's slightly more relevant than just a bunch of people getting together for a drink. So he said, "Yeah, that sounds great. I'll sort that, and let's get together next week for another coffee." We met up again, and he said, "Right, I found 2 speakers." I said, "Okay, that's a bit more than, you know, one conversation in a pub, but you know, who are they? What's it going to be about?" And he said, "It's going to be about social media and how it's going to change the world. And they're flying over from the US." I went, "Whoa,
Wow.
what? Wait a minute. What do you mean they're flying over from the US?" And he said, "Well, that's, you know, where these social networks have been born. These are the guys that know their stuff. So I thought we'd invite them over." I said, "Well, who's paying for this?" And we're going to need a hotel room for both of them, and, you know, the costs are mounting up. And he said, "Well, we're going to sell tickets." I said, "Yeah, but that's a lot of, you know, 25 quid tickets to cover all of that. We need sponsorship." So we got some sponsorship together. I found 3 more people in London who were interested in social media at the time. Darren Forsyth, who just left the BBC, Maz Najim, who was at Sky running their social media. And we did a half-a-day seminar. And all we did was put it out on Twitter. We just said, "This is happening in Exeter. If you're interested in social media, come along." And 220 people showed up. And we were just amazed. A, we made money. And B, I said, "I think this is a business." So we did it again really quickly in about 3 months later. And we did a whole day. And then we did 2 days. And it just started from there. And ever since, we've had this wonderful community of coming to listen to other entrepreneurs and business, how they built and scaled their businesses.
So Like Minds is different. So, I mean, I speak at loads of conferences, and there is a kind of a standard way that the conferences go. People arrive, they drink coffee, they go into the toilets, they pretend they're on the phone, they come out, they nervously network, claim to be wonderful things. People turn up and try and flog you stuff endlessly. You feel backed into a corner. Eventually, you find someone you know. How is Like Minds different from the other conferences?
It's very much a community. So there's an incredible support community outside the actual event that runs across the year. People are connected, obviously, on social, and now connected, via email or phone, having met at the events. And because it's small, it's intimate, and people actually do get to have proper conversations with people. They learn stuff. We're running 40 masterclasses this year, so you can choose, all sorts of different topics about the state your business is in and where you want to take it and how you can grow it and expand it. We don't have any stands. It's not a commercial selling arena. It's about sharing your knowledge with the other participants. It's all about helping each other get to where we all want to get to. And I think that's what sets us apart.
Okay. So let's talk. We'll come back to Like Minds, because we can't leave it alone, because it has so much in common with what a modern agency is trying to do. Because in some senses you have an agency model there, but we'll talk about what agencies do. But can we just I can't talk to you without mentioning your illustrious history. I mean, you have your LinkedIn profile. There are names on that list that people would die for: Pink Floyd, Hypnosis, Wham. So give us a quick potted history on that. How did those names all appear?
A little potted history. So I'm a creative by background, by degree. I went to Manchester School of Art and did a foundation course which covered everything from sculpture to painting to graphics to photography. Decided to focus on graphics and did my degree in London at what is now called LCC. The London College of Communication was LCP, London College of Printing. But during my time there, I wrote a thesis on record sleeve design, because I was trying to work out what job I was going to try and get.
What year are you talking about?
Late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
And my father bought me a book from this company called Hypnosis for Christmas, because he knew I was interested in record sleeve design. And I, like all youngsters, music was a really important part of my life, but still is. And design, I couldn't work out how to marry the two together. And somebody said, well, why don't you design record sleeves? I had this light bulb moment. I said, is that a thing? And they said, yeah, of course it's a thing. So I'm reading this book on hypnosis, decide to write my thesis on record sleeve design, come back to college for the start of the term, and my flatmate says, you'll never guess where I've just had a holiday job. And I said, no way. He said, Hypnosis. And I said, that's amazing. Can you introduce me, and maybe I could interview them? And he said, yeah, sure. So we went down, interviewed them, and Storm asked me what I did. And I said, well, I'm a graphics student at LCP. And he said, brilliant, we need an assistant. Can you start tomorrow? And I said, yes. And he said, look, you can skip a few lectures, can't you? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. It's not going to impact too much, because I just thought the opportunity of working with a company like that would be absolutely amazing. And of course it was. I got to meet all of these bands that I bought the records for when I was at school, and learnt an incredible amount, not just about graphics, but about photography, a lot about making tea, a lot about running around Soho with films to get developed and stuff. And the three partners were all very different. Poe, was the photographer. Storm was the ideas man. Peter, who was also in a band was incredibly good on lighting, and an incredibly creative guy. So they turned into a film company when MTV launched, and I worked for the film company, which is called Greenback Films. So I learned a lot, again, about editing, producing, directing, tea making. So I had this fantastic, again, sort of foundation in how to run a film company, how to run a design agency, how to run a photographic studio. And so much so that when they decided to stop designing record sleeves and focus wholly on making pop promos for people like Paul Young and Nick Kershaw and all of those sort of 80s bands, and Robert Plant as well, and all the constituent elements of the old Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, I said, look, I want to go back to do record sleeve design. I'm going to set up my own company to do that. And they said, fantastic, you do that. We'll recommend our clients to you, and you recommend your clients to us to make the pop promos. Perfect. And so that's what we did. And I ended up with Dave Gilmour gave me studio space in Brit Row, which was their recording studio at the time, and where they used to store all of their gear. And I had a little studio in the car park, actually. It's a separate little building. And I used to see the pig being rolled in and rolled out every, so often when they were going on international tours, and started designing for myself, as it were, for my own clients as well as the historical hypnosis clients. Cool.
So if we just talk about agency life now, because now without meaning to be patronising, there'll be some people watching who don't know what a record sleeve is and don't know how important a record cover was, and in some sense it's a cultural icon in that sense. But agencies now, in general, I mean, how do you see the world that they're in now? That this, because there's hardly a differentiation between a marketing agency and a digital marketing agency. The lines are really blurred. Yeah, we have pure PC agencies or pure SEO agencies, but everyone to some degrees digital. Whether they're graphics, whether they're designing CD covers, if people still do that, all the way through to a PR agency or a marketing.
Well, record sleeves are coming back, Robert.
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I didn't catch.
Record sleeves are coming back.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
If you wait long enough, these things do come back. So how do you see agencies now? How do you? I mean, you obviously know a bunch of agency owners. How do you see the world that they're in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's very different now. I run my own agency, which I founded in 1994, Icon, which was my design agency that I founded. I sold in 1989 to a UK PLC. We had offices we had 3,500 square foot office in Farringdon Road, sort of pioneering that Shoreditch vibe. And an office in Studio City in LA, because we were doing a lot of work with the US record companies as well. But I sold that and worked for the PLC for about 4 years. The internet came along for me in about 1993, and I got a CompuServe account. And I just saw what the internet could become. I'm a bit of a magazine junkie, and I just thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to launch my own magazine. I don't have to print it. I don't have to distribute it. All I have to do is design it and pull the content together and put it online. Unfortunately, bandwidth thing to do. But I think, the world I grew up in was very product oriented. So I was fortunate in the sense that when I did a design, I tried to tot it up the other day. I think my creative work's now been on 350 million albums. So that's an amazing sort of stat to me. And arguably people could say, oh, well, I've designed a website and 1 million people a month come and look at it. It's not quite the same, but I think that digital agencies these days are, in terms of differentiating themselves from all the other 500,000 digital agencies that are out there have got a very difficult job. And what I've done with i2i now is focus on a specific sector. So we focus on luxury. It's an area that's slightly still behind the curve digitally. It's a sector that still requires a lot of digital marketing. Gone are the days when you can build it and they will come.
Yeah.
So we tend to focus on how to, rather than building websites, which is what we used to do, we focus very much on how can we help drive traffic to your website for your product or service.
Okay, so this for me,
going into a niche is an ideal way to strengthen your own.
So this for me is my kind of bread and butter, which is like segmentation and differentiation. Interestingly enough, this feels like a bunch of old guys talking. 1961, Theodore Levitt, Harvard Business Review, Marketing Myopia, and he talks about, and it's as relevant today as it is ever. He talks about segmentation and differentiation. He talks about who do you aim for? Who's your target audience? Luxury, and a niche within a niche is better than just a niche. And he talks about differentiation, which is the why should people buy from you when they could buy from the competition. So just can you just give us a bit about differentiation, and what's your how do you respond to the why should people buy from you when they could buy from the competition? You know, what makes you different from the rest? Is it you're faster, smarter, brighter, friendlier, ruder? What's the piece?
Experience. You know, I think I've seen a lot in my 40 years in business, and I've tried a lot of things. I know what works and what doesn't work. Also, obviously, contrary to that, everything is constantly evolving. So you need to stay on top of stuff. Sometimes, you know, the younger agencies will say, look, we're at the bleeding edge of what's happening now. You need to be doing AI, AR, VR, you know, whatever it is. Try and stay away from the bleeding edge because that stuff breaks. I'd rather be leading edge rather than bleeding edge. So we try and stay on top of it as much as we can, translate what's happening now into language that the client understands. So we're not focused on talking tech speak, gobbledygook, geek speak, and all of that. And we can very clearly point to stats that show an improvement for what we've done for our clients. And I think, again, that's really key. Saying you're the coolest kid on the block anymore isn't really, you know, valid for a client. What a client wants to know is, what can you do for me? How quickly can you do it? How much is it going to cost me? And then you've got a conversation going.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it feels kind of like marketing and sales 101. But as I go around the agency world, so often you go to a website and you go, actually, I've really not only have I not got a clue what you do with your 3-letter acronyms, but I've not got a clue what you do for me and why I should give you money. And I'm going to go back to Theodore Levitt again, actually, because he was ace. And he said that everyone's obsessed with tactics, AI, MI, MO, PI, whatever it is, VR. And he said it's not about tactics. And he says, and then everyone becomes obsessed about strategy. Everyone wants to talk about strategy, because strategy everyone talks about as being the really important thing. And he says quite rightly that it's not really about strategy, because actually at the heart of it all is the customer and the customer needs and the customer wants, what it is. And unless you put the customer at the heart of the business and how you can help the customer, brackets, why should people bother to buy from you, then you're absolutely at a loss. And I really do think that some of the younger bleeding edge agencies are so in love with what they do that they've actually forgotten that the client is thinking, I can put flyers on car windscreens, I can do radio ads, I can do a website, and all these things cost me 5,000 quid. And I only want to use the one which will help me get more better customers into my business. So people don't wake up and say, I want VR or I want AI. They wake up thinking, how can I get more customers into my business? Or how can I get more better or different? And I just think there's been this disconnect between agencies and what their clients want. You know, people don't wake up in the morning and buy what you do, they buy what you do does for them. And you know, I'll stop ranting. Okay, so if we look at
for their business. No, you're absolutely right. And also, you know, it's not all the fault of agencies. A lot of the fault lies with clients as well. You know, they've got younger, slightly more less experienced people working in the marketing department. And, you know, I had a conversation the other day with a property prospect. They said, how can you help us? And I said, well, I think you should really focus on social, and you should focus on Instagram, because your properties are beautiful. That's what Instagram is great at capturing. And they went, oh, no, we do social. I said, oh, okay, you do social. So can I have a look at your channel? And they said, yeah. And I said, popping up pictures of your product all the time. You're not talking about the area. Do you have your Instagram handle on your print advertising? And they looked at me and they said, oh, no. And I said, well, depending on your on the time of year, 80 to 120,000 pounds a month. And I said, and you don't have your social handles on there? Are you tracking the ads? Do you have a code on there? No. How do you do that? What's that all about? I'm thinking, you know, this is a property company, £5 million apartments in the south of France, and you're spending £120,000 a month on print advertising that's going in the bin the next day. Just seems insane to me. So I think there's a lot of clients that need re-educating in that regard, in certain sectors.
And I also think it's I mean, one of the things which drives me mad about agencies is that they arrive because they're a PPC agency or an SEO agency, and they don't think, what is it the client that the client needs that'll help the client best of all. What they think is, how best can I sell them SEO or PPC or graphics or web design or AI or management information. And, you know, obviously if your only tool is a hammer, you know, all problems are going to be a nail. And you know, my experience is, if you say to a client, you're not ready for us right now, what you need to do first is you need to sort out your proposition. You need to sort out your positioning. When you've got that sorted out, get the website and the branding sorted out, then come and see us. But it's madness to get clients coming to you who aren't ready, and they've got a half-baked solution, or they haven't done the thinking themselves. So just in terms of agency world, the agencies we look at, you know, the agencies that you compete with, and yourself. I mean, what do you see as being the key, the short-term, day-to-day, week-by-week challenges that agencies have got?
I think probably the really obvious one is talent. It is incredible. I mean, I'm sitting in London. I spend 4 days in London and the rest of the week back in Devon. And finding talent in London is incredibly difficult. Finding talent, really, I think, in any major city is incredibly difficult. But one of the things that I've started to do is look locally. So I live in Ashburton, which is just off Dartmoor, in the beautiful part of the country. And I'm starting to find the most amazing talent pool of freelancers based there, who've decided that, you know, they've had enough of London, they want to move out, or they want to start a family and they don't want to bring the kids up in London, or in whatever major city they're in, Manchester, Leeds, Edinburgh, or perhaps not Edinburgh so much. Edinburgh is a beautiful city. The pool of local talent, you'd be really surprised who's out there. So I'd start looking outside. You know, I'm part of a coalition of about 40 to 60 freelancers who all specialize in different sectors. And we can dip in on the WhatsApp channel and say, hey guys, does anybody know about blockchain? And somebody will stick their hand up and go, yeah, I'm an expert in blockchain. What do you want to know? Can I help you on your project? And I think that's the future, that you may have a smaller core team at your agency than the 25, 30 people I used to have in London. bring it back down to, 5, 6 people and have 60 coalition contributors. And that way the client gets exactly what they need. They're not being sold a spanner when they want a hammer, as you say. And you're going to learn a lot more, and you're going to deliver a much better project.
So I think there is a definite move to those more cooperative networks, as long as the client gets value for money. And what about your views about the big picture, which is like, what will my agency look like in 3 years' time? Because 3 years ago Google was the only gig in town. Now there's Google, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then you've got the whole Cambridge Analytica piece, and then you've got GDPR, and then you have to mention it, Brexit, and then we've got globalization, and then we've the mountain of pressure and change coming towards agencies. We're to PPC, we need to become more brand. We're to brand, we need to become more digital. I mean, it's no wonder that people are losing sleep. What's your view on what agencies are going to be doing in 3 or 4 years' time? The same thing or different?
No, you've got to be different. You've only got to take a look at what's happening with Ogilvy to see how the agency landscape is changing. You've got to learn to be more agile. You have to accept that. I think gone are the days when you have these big monolithic agencies that are all men, and no matter how much you chop it up and have, okay, let's keep it in the Ogilvy family, because if you don't get on with this agency, perhaps you'll get on with that agency, but the money still stays within the group. I think it's very cyclical.
Hello again, and we lost connection, the wonders of the internet there. We did have a slightly dodgy line all the way through, and finally the line broke up. So we're going to continue where we got to, where I was asking Andrew, who you now may notice is now indoors. I asked Andrew about the long-term impact, all these things going on, different platforms, different customer needs, different client requests, millennials, this whole world that's going on. And I guess my question is, how do we know what an agency is going to look like in 3 or 4 years' time? And Andrew came back saying, he said, things go in cycles. It was a bit like one of those a Buddhi type thing. Things go in cycles, and then the internet went. So things go in cycles.
Things go in cycles.
I bet you talk about Oasis.
Yes, yes. The circle of life. No. What I saw when I worked in the music industry was that obviously a lot of successful bands had their own record labels. So, you had Creation, for example, which spawned a lot of incredible bands in the 80s. And what happens is they then get bought up by the larger companies. And it's the same with agencies. Ogilvy scouts will be out looking at all sorts of independent agencies or privately owned agencies, and they'll be buying them up, basically buying their clients in the same way that record companies were buying bands because they were buying the sales effectively. And then they become very bloated and very big and unmanageable. So they start losing money. They start divesting themselves of staff and people and talent. A new record labels start coming up, and new agencies start coming up. And I think we're going through one of those cyclical things at the moment where the larger agencies are looking at the overhead and thinking, we're not going to be able to survive working in this way. So lots more businesses are going to spring up. Same thing happened with Nokia in Finland. There's a massive amount of digital talent now in and around Helsinki, who are all ex-Nokia engineers starting their own businesses. We do a lot of consultancy work with the Finnish government, helping bring Finnish companies over here, doing business development for them and creating sales pipelines and things. So I can see this happening sort of firsthand, not just in the UK, but in Europe and beyond.
And there's another couple of things going on. And I think one is, there's a lot of talk about millennials, but I do think people's attitudes changed. I do think, I was running a workshop recently with and we had a 150, 200 person agency in the room and like a 15 person agency in the room. And the guy running the 15 person agency looked far more relaxed, I have to say, than the guy running the 150 person. And then when we actually got down to valuations of the business, it turns out that the 15 person agency, let's just keep the numbers really simple, 1.5 million turnover, 300k profit, 5 times multiplier, it's worth 1.5 million quid for himself, and he leaves the room. And the guy who spent an extra 7 or 8 years selling his shares, getting investors. Yeah, he's got 200 people, and yeah, he's doing 20 million, and yeah, they're doing 10% net profit, which is 2 million times a multiplier of, I don't know, 6, 7, which makes the business worth 14 million. But he's only got 10% share of the business now, which is 1.4 million quid. So, okay, he has been earning 150 or 200k all the way along, and he's had a brilliant journey. But I think a lot of people are realizing that it's actually okay, you know, and in any case, at age 40, I'm going to go off and do something else. So all I need is some seed corn for my next venture. It'd be nice to get the kids' education nailed and confirmed. Whereas I think there was more of a kind of the Madison, there's a book called Madison Avenue Manslaughter. There used to be more of a, this trail, you know, kitchen table, dining room table, industrial unit, get bought out by Accenture.
And also I think we should talk about productisation, which is becoming more and more of a thing. You know, again, sort of throughout my career, I've always had what the lovely Gary V calls a side hustle. And an example of that was me tipping up to EMI actually one day and going to a band album launch, which they would typically hold in their foyer. And I noticed everybody standing around drinking Peroni. And I turned to the marketing manager and I said, how much does it cost you to you know, do you get it from Costco or something? I mean, there's a lot of beer here. And he said, yeah, pretty much that's what we do. You know, we go to the cheapest supermarket we can find. And I asked him how much it was costing him, and he told me, and I said, what if I could put the album cover on the beer bottle for you? And he said, that's a brilliant idea. Could you do that for the next album? I said, yeah, absolutely. And I went and found a brewery and talked to them about their new bottling plant, which was under capacity. And they said, we'd love to, you know, provide you with some beer. And I said, can I slap my own label on that? And they said, yeah, absolutely fine. And I just emailed the artwork up to North Yorkshire, to the label manufacturer. They sent the labels down to the brewery. The brewery sent the beer to the record company, and I wrote an invoice. And I was making £1 a bottle. It almost put my children through school, that one. You know, simple little ideas. Learn to productize some of the stuff that you do. You know, recently for us in the luxury market, we built a new platform called Ultralux, which is aimed at property developers who want to sell property worth 5 million and above, but it's done in an advertorial style. So rather than a listings thing like Rightmove or Zoopla or any of those, this is proper content, not just about the property, but about the surrounding area, the best pubs, clubs, schools that you can go to. And we'll charge them per million value of the property that's on there a month. Very simple, can be run from anywhere in the world, and the content comes from the property PR agents that are writing this content anyway, and trying to get it into the national press. So, you know, start to look at the sectors that you're in and the work that you're doing, and seeing how perhaps you might be able to productize it for your own benefit.
I mean, what I really love about you know, all the ideas you've come up with is that, and I don't mean to be disrespectful at all, quite the reverse, that actually it's simple ideas. It's not massively complicated stuff.
No.
It's stuff that people haven't thought of. It's joining the dots.
Join the dots. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just join the dots. Just start to think slightly laterally about stuff. You know, Facebook wasn't the first social network. You know, I was talking to Thomas Power the other day,
Thomas,
the Academy, which is just sort of starting up again in a slightly different guise. I remember being interviewed, actually, funny enough, on CNBC back at the height of the dot-com rush. And I said, look, it's the pioneers that get shot and the settlers that get the land. And you have to remember that. And going back to my, comment about being bleeding edge or being leading edge, not bleeding edge, don't try and be the brand new thing, because it's going to be really tough for you to get that across. Just, rein it back in a little bit.
I think there's something really disingenuous about the entrepreneurial world. Okay, so I think this thing about the kitchen table, dining room table, garage, industrial unit, and along comes EWC, along comes Accenture with a check, happens to so few people that it distorts how we think we're doing. I mean, that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is a lot of people just think they're meant to be bigger than they really are, rather than happy. And I think there's a really big movement towards I want to run the best agency I want to run, that gives me the lifestyle I want to run, as opposed to the biggest. And when we talk about exit, there's always 5 or 6 recent exits I'm familiar with, where there's a guy I know at the moment who he got 1/3 of his money up front. He took the summer off, and when he went back in, they said, "Why are you here? It's 9:15." He said, "Sorry." They said, "Why are you here at 9:15? We start at 8:30." He said, "No, you don't understand. I have a coffee in Starbucks and do my thinking. Then I come in at 9:15, 10." And they said, "Yeah, you work here now for us, and it's 9 to 5 with an hour off for lunch." And he just thought, you know what, you can stuff your other 2/3 of the money, because that's not what I'm here to do. And
you have to remember that when you've sold the business, it's no longer your business, even though you might still be working in it.
And I've got a really close friend of mine, someone I interviewed on this, who's had an amazing experience with Dentsu, and it's been absolutely fantastic. So there are some absolute horror stories.
Yes. Yeah, and there are some good stories as well. No, absolutely. I mean, one of the things for me was decision making. When you're a small owner-managed business, where you have business partners, you can have a corridor, what we used to call a corridor conversation, and make a decision and walk off, and it would happen. I took the idea, when I sold my design agency to this PLC, they were a print group. When the internet came along in 93, 94, I said, I want to hire some developers. And they said, write a board report. And I started to lose the will to live. But I wrote the board report. I was the youngest group MD there. I was 31, I think, at the time. Wrote the board report, and the answer came back, the internet's a fad, it'll never take off, which is what forced me to resign 6-7 months later and start Eye to Eye. People don't always see what's going to happen next, what the future holds.
I tell the story of my uncle Ivor Raymond, who was a record producer in 1962, and he kicked the Beatles out of his office.
Whoops.
Yeah, well, he had Dusty Springfield and the Springfields. He didn't do too badly.
All right.
He produced the first David Bowie album, but
really, I never knew that.
But he would have been one of hundreds of people who said the internet's not going to take off, or the Beatles it'll never catch on. So there's always that kind of stuff. Okay, so just getting back to Like Minds, because we need to start sort of wrapping up. How do you see get what you've done in the past? How do you see the future of Like Minds? What's going to happen to Like Minds? Just poodles along, becomes global, goes online, goes offline, just does what it's doing?
It's already global in the sense that we live stream it, and the keynote videos are recorded and put up on our platform. So we've got over 100 talks up there now from all sorts of different business leaders. People can go and view those on weareLikeMinds.com. And the future for us really is we'll be doing a lot more events in London over the next few months. We currently run a series at 12 Hay Hill, Private Members Club in Mayfair, but we're going to extend that out to a number of different private members clubs across the city. We have run it in New York and a couple of times, and in Helsinki. So we may well continue to do international events. But what I'd like to see Like Minds flagship event in Exeter grow and expand. It's sort of South by Southwest in the Southwest. There's no reason.
Down from the Hotel du Vin. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So South by's in Austin in Texas. You know, it's not in New York or LA or Chicago or, you know, a major American city. I mean, it's a fairly big city now, but 25 years ago, it wasn't. And how did they achieve that? They achieved that by putting on amazing content with amazing speakers, and people wanted to come. Yeah. And it became, you know, a thing that everybody globally who was in the music / film / tech industry wanted to go to. In the same way that, why is the Cannes Film Festival the film festival to go to? So I would like to see that happen. And that's, I guess, partially down to me finding the right kind of speakers and the right kind of talent to put on to attract those audiences from across the world.
And Like Minds 2019, when is it?
It is on October the 18th. If you go to likeminds.live, tickets are up there. So grab them and come down and see it. And it's on a Friday, so bring the family, and then you can experience the wonderful Devon countryside coastline at the same time.
And one of the things about Like Minds is I know quite a few people who visited, and there is a Like Minds thing. There is a sort of a vibe.
Yeah.
The sorts of people that you attract, the sorts of speakers you attract, and everyone does talk about there being a family atmosphere there, which makes
it is very much a family atmosphere. Yeah, I mean, we shot a nice little video actually that's up on our YouTube channel. So if people take a look at that, and you can see some of the speakers and some of the attendees talk about why they go and what they thought about it, which is, you know, unscripted. I promise.
Correct. So if with this amazing back catalogue of things that you've been doing, if you were to do it all again, is there something you had done differently? Is there something you would have done sooner? Is there something you'd have done not done? Is there what's your kind of reflections on that?
I think probably learn to raise money early is what I would have done. Trying to scale things out of earned income is a long old road. And I think I probably could have speeded up a few ideas and a few projects a lot faster if I'd gone out and raised some money.
And what about for the agency owner founders who are watching or listening? What is your kind of, you know, if I kind of wake you up in the middle of the night and say, you know, Drew, what would you tell an agency owner if you had to give them sort of, you know, 2 or 3 nuggets, golden nuggets? What would they be? What would your kind of
focus to you know, again, that's sort of slightly going against what I'm saying about having another productizing your business. You may well get distracted whilst doing that. I think if you've got an agency of a certain size where you are literally managing the business and you're not in it, and I guess that's another little nugget of advice, is get yourself to the point where you are not the business. You know, that your business should be the business. You should be working on it and not in it. Don't keep interfering with all the staff that you've hired saying, no, you know, I do it this way. You're supposed to have been hiring people smarter than you. You don't need to do that. What you need to do is build a team around you that are hungry and ambitious and enthusiastic and involved in what they're doing, and give them the opportunity to run with what they know. And that frees you up then if you want to start thinking about productizing bits of the business, then you can do that. And that's your baby. That's where you can get your hands dirty. You know, one of the things I learned running a design agency was that I stopped designing about 5 years ago, and I hadn't quite realized that. And so I allowed myself to have one client that I could continue to be creative with, and let all the other clients work with the rest of the team. So that way I was happy and everybody else was happy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Drew. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Minor change of scene halfway through, but apart from that,
I'm slightly warmer too. So
yeah, I bet you are. Thank you very much. I really look forward to seeing you in Exeter in October. That'll be absolutely great. And in the rollout, all of Drew's links and contacts and URL stuff will be there for everyone to see. So do get in contact with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.